All right, I will set the stage for Johnny before he goes into the reimbursement activity and we take a closer look at that documentation. 3 goals for this session. 1 is to give you a basic reimbursement overview, the who, what, when, where's of reimbursements. Next, we'll debrief that error packet activity. So hopefully you had a chance to look at that homework assignment. And then finally, we'll take a look at the perfect ARR. So we'll look at the ARR in terms of the order we like to see and documentation. So going back to the slide on getting the green light for reimbursements, most programs are in grant startup mode at the moment. So you will be likely working on your signed subgrantee agreements, completing that financial management survey, collecting your most recent audits, building your AmeriCorps budget, and getting all of those extra pieces of documentation together. Once those are in place, you will get notification from your financial manager that the grant year is up and running, ready for reimbursements. Your budget and survey have been approved, and that your reimbursement workbook is available in Dropbox. Your first reference or point of reference is going to be the reimbursement checklist. That's going to let you know what you need to submit for reimbursements and the order it needs to appear in. If you're still new to the reimbursement process and you haven't used the workbook yet, I encourage you to look at the reimbursement workbook instructions to see how to properly fill out that workbook and how it all ties together. As far as collecting backup documentation, you'll want to refer to the documentation guidance for typical YouthBuild expenses. So this section of the checklist will walk you through each budget subcategory on some of the typical things we see in YouthBuild budgets and what constitutes as sufficient backup documentation. And you can also find a list of unallowable costs at the very end of that checklist. Taking a deeper look at what is included in this checklist, this looks a little bit different from years in the past. First and foremost is your signed monthly FSR. That should be the first page of the FSR, that signed certification. Next is a copy of the expense and match workbook. And as I mentioned, it's best to upload the actual Excel copy of that workbook. And that should be supported by a detailed AmeriCorps general ledger. So this general ledger ties penny for penny to what has been entered into the expense report for that particular month. After that, we get into backup documentation. So usually your next expense is personnel compensation. So all the staff payroll and timesheets for the reporting period. If your member has full-time members that receive a living allowance, you'll want to provide that summary as well, along with the member payroll support documentation. And then all of your other transaction types. So providing proof of cost or payments for your various supplies, other operating costs, as well as the basis of allocation if that is being allocated across multiple funding sources. As I mentioned, updated reimbursement workbook. There is one reimbursement workbook now. So we've got the signed FSR, the expense worksheet, the match worksheet, the staff summary, and member living allowance, all living in the same workbook. So quick pop quiz on the basics around reimbursement. You can utilize the chat box to give us your answers. First question, you can bill expenses blank days prior to the first AmeriCorps member enrollments. And this does not apply to tangible goods. All right, exactly 30 days prior to the first AmeriCorps member enrollments. So you'll want to be looking at your 2021 members and getting a sense of when they're going to start their service. Next question, AmeriCorps reimbursement requests are submitted on a blank basis. So how often are you submitting those reimbursement requests? Monthly, exactly. And this is monthly for both grant years, or I guess all active grant years. So you may have an active 1920 grant and an active 2021 grant that you'll be submitting for on a monthly basis. Next question, you can connect with your AmeriCorps blank manager with questions regarding the budget, reimbursements, and any other fiscal inquiries. So who can you reach out to? Your AmeriCorps blank manager. All right, fiscal, yep, they're waving on the camera, there they are. Reimbursement requests are submitted to blank. Where are we going to upload those reimbursement requests? Dropbox, excellent. If you do not have access to Dropbox, you can reach out to your financial manager and they can add you to that list. And you can email blank when the reimbursement is ready for review. So what is the fiscal team's email address? While they're thinking.
The general email address.
The general team email. You can certainly reach out to your fiscal manager, but what is the email for the AmeriCorps team? Thank you, Scott. AmeriCorps@youthbuild.org. So anytime a reimbursement is ready, you can upload that to Dropbox. We don't necessarily get a notification when it's uploaded to Dropbox, so it's best to reach out via email just to confirm that it is ready for review. All right, AmeriCorps@youthbuild.org. And final question, true or false? Full support backup documentation for both expense and match must be submitted on a monthly basis. Is this statement true or false? A lot of falses, okay. False, false. Yes, false. It was a trick question. So, expense is submitted on a monthly basis. However, match is only submitted on a limited basis. So we'll get more into this in our third and final session around match compliance concerns. Can anyone tell me how that limited review basis works? Which months of match are we looking at? We got the largest, the first, requested month, first month with major match. I would say that's a great answer. So we typically look at the first and last month of match. However, we're going to select a month of match that actually has a considerable amount of expenses. So if you're just billing some supplies under match, it's not really worth the review. We would usually wait until staff expenses are being reported under match to actually initiate that review. All right, so I will throw it over to Johnny if you want to share your screen.
Thank you, everyone, for being patient. Hopefully you had time to complete this before the presentation, either last week or during the break. So we'll be going over the answers as a group. So the error packet was created as a way for you to step into our shoes and really see how we put together the packet and do the review process. And in doing so, hopefully learn new strategies and learn a couple things on how to, some things to avoid. So before we do that, before we jump in to the presentation, I want us to break into breakout rooms. What I did was I broke it down to different sections and how to break up the mistakes and the errors. It's difficult to do this virtually. I know we do this in person, so bear with me. We'll be using the chat box a lot. So click on that chat box and we'll be using it throughout the end of the session. So first up, we have the FSR. So now in the chat box, I want you to type in your answers. So what did you find wrong with the FSR? Just type it in. Anything wrong? Any numbers not signed? Tammy, okay. Anything else? Numbers don't match up. Missing signature, Reggie. No match sources, Ridley, okay. Give you a few more seconds. Final report, no date, interesting. No date, okay. Okay, so no phone, right, we're missing information. Is that it? Okay, I'm gonna move on. I'm gonna click on presentation. Right, so yeah, we don't have a signature for the FSR. Remember that all FSRs must be signed. I didn't catch the phone number, not necessarily a deal breaker when it comes to approving reimbursement, but signature, major one. If we don't have this the FSR signed, we cannot process as reimbursement. Remember that all FSRs must be signed, even the 0 FSRs. We get that a lot when at the beginning of the grant year, you don't start charging up until maybe January, February. We have a bunch of FSRs that are 0. You want to sign those as well, even though you're not reporting any numbers. So not having assigned FSR is an easy thing. Now, when you have issues with numbers, then that's a little bit different. You're gonna have to go back to the match and expense report and then generate that new FSR and sign it again. We'll go through the flow process in a few slides. So in this case, the only thing wrong with the FSR is the signature. Great job, everyone. Okay. Box 6, okay. I'm gonna move on to timesheets. Now in the chat box, timesheets. Anything off with the timesheets? Any numbers off? Any incorrect names? Anyone? Missing information. Timesheets are a biggie, I think, for most of us. We always find mistakes with timesheets, whether it's the numbers are wrong. Oh, missing signature, Elizabeth. Okay, that's one. Anything else? Yeah, timesheets are the ones that are sort of dictate what the rest of the AR packet is going to look like sometimes. Hours recorded did not agree. Right, numbers did not match up. Okay, thank you, Belinda. We have 80 hours. Okay, 80 hours, some misreported, 928 timesheet missing. Ah, okay. We're missing a pay period, okay. All right, let's go over the answers. Thank you, everyone. You got most of them. All of them, actually. So Mary's hours are incorrect. Notice here, they're reporting 40 hours for AmeriCorps. We'll take a look at the staff summary in just a second, but we know that this is incorrect. They don't match up with everything else that's been submitted. So, this is incorrect. We have the signature, it's great, but the AMC hours are off, and we can assume that the rest of the hours are off as well. So Mary's hours are off, it's one of them. Yeah, and as Elizabeth pointed out, missing signature for Dan. All timesheets must be signed by employee and supervisor and dated as well. And something else wrong with this timesheet, with Dan's timesheet, is that, as you can notice with the highlighted column, there's 80 hours reported for AmeriCorps, sorry, for the state grant / match, this vague grant that we can assume is match, it's a state grant. We can't really assume that it's AmeriCorps, so we have 80 hours, not clear where those hours are allocated. So yeah, 80 hours completely off, doesn't really match with the staff summary. So that's about it for timesheets. And we'll be going over how these timesheets sort of feed into the staff summary in just a bit. So before we do that, let's go for pay stubs. Anyone find anything with the pay stubs in the chat box? Can anyone type in any mistakes? Any incomplete pay stubs? Incorrect pay period? Remember that the pay stubs, payroll is super important. Also goes into the staff summary. If something goes wrong with the pay stubs, something's missing, numbers are off, you have to go back and redo the whole packet. So we'll go over that in just a minute. Anything off with the pay stubs? So the common ones are missing information, incorrect pay period. Did anyone find anything wrong with the pay stubs? Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the chat box. That's okay. There's a couple mistakes. I guess they're not very obvious. Anyone? Dan Smith is missing. Oh, yeah, we're missing Dan Smith. Okay. Thank you, Ridley. Thank you, Belinda. Anything else? Okay. Let's go over the answers. Yes, so we're missing pay stubs for Dan, no timesheet for Tom Jones. Exactly, and Tom Jones. So notice that, well, no, we have no timesheet for Tom Jones. We have the pay stubs for Tom Jones. However, remember he's matched, and we'll go over that in just a second. We have match in the expense side. So for backup documentation, you want to provide that backup for everyone on the expense side. On the expense side, we only have Dan and Mary. We're missing all of Dan's timesheets, sorry, pay stubs. And then Mary, and you can tell, like, we only have one pay period, so we're missing that pay period. So it's unclear if she's being charged to the grant fully. So yeah, that's one of the big mistakes here. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna move on to the next section. Staff summary, okay. This is a big one. So in the chat box, please type in your answers. Anything wrong with the staff summary? So we talked about, missing documentation. We're missing timesheets. We're missing pay stubs. And remember, that feeds into the staff summary. Fringe details, thank you, Reggie. Yeah, everyone misses the fringe. No fringe, thank you, Kim, yes. Yeah, that's an easy one to miss. All of it's done, and then there's that weird bottom section, second half section of the staff summary, and then we miss it, and it's like, oh, we have to go back. No fringe. Anything else? Thank you, Ridley. Yeah, the hours don't match timesheets, right? Because the timesheets are off. Same thing for the pay stubs. Okay. Anything else? I think we got most of them. Let's see. Okay, let's check. Okay, as Reggie pointed out, we're missing the fringe benefits section. I have a whole video on how to complete the staff summary on YouTube, so you can go check that out if you wish. But fringe benefits, very important. You want to add that every time you enter your information for hours and totals. Now the picture is really grainy, but in the highlighted yellow section, that's where you want to put your personal fringe benefits numbers. So that's one of them. Let's see the next one. Right, hours do not match up. So we have Tom, we have his, he's on the expense, so he's on the match side, but let's focus on Dan and Mary. So for Dan, see how we're reporting, let's see, sorry about this, 64 hours. Sorry, for Mary, we're reporting 56 hours, and the timesheets, we are reporting 40 hours, 80 hours total for AmeriCorps. Something's off here, whether it's the timesheets are off or the staff summary is off. Something went wrong. Perhaps we need to resubmit the timesheets. So you can usually tell by the column with AmeriCorps, it's highlighted yellow. And the total hours seem fine, but just AmeriCorps hours seem off. 56 versus 80. Same goes for Dan. Notice here, we've talked about his timesheets. Again, vague grant. We don't know whether it's AmeriCorps. We can assume. We don't know. But they're charging 80 hours to the grant. And notice here on the staff summary, they're reporting 64 hours. So that's clearly wrong. We have to go back and resubmit that timesheet. Which brings me to the flow. So the staff summary is really important, and it depends on the information that you provide. That's their pay stubs and your timesheets. And the staff summary feeds into your expense and match workbook that generates that FSR that needs to be signed every month. So when you disrupt this pathway, you're gonna have to go back and review what went wrong. And in our case, it was both missing information and number errors. So if you have number errors, you go back and check your pay stubs. Is everything correct? Check your records to see if your timesheets are fine. Fill out that timesheet and fill out that stuff summary once again, re-upload and sign it again and submit it. And as far as missing information for fringe, all you have to do is go in there and enter those numbers and resubmit. So in our case, it's both. So it's a bit of a complicated situation. Okay, moving on to the general ledger. In the chat box, please enter your answers. Anything wrong with the general ledger? Incorrect month. Doesn't say what grant year. Yeah, we rarely get this, that the general ledger is incorrect. It doesn't match the amount billed. Thank you, Tammy. Yes, bill doesn't match expense. Yeah, we can see that. It's like 5,000. Anything else? I know every program in my portfolio, every program is a different GL. We really have to review it and like learn how to decipher it sometimes. But once you catch it, you sort of get used to it. All right, no date on the GL, right? Petty cash use for what? Dates? Yeah. Thank you, Reggie. Thank you, Belinda. Yeah, lots of errors here. Okay, let's go over it. Yes, the numbers are clearly wrong, but for a reason. This is for October. This is not the month that's being reported. Remember, if you go back to your expense and match report, we're reporting September 2020. So this is the incorrect month. Numbers are off. Not very clear why they're charging 5,000. So off the bat, that's off. Right off the bat, that's not correct. Also, if you notice on the vendor client column, it says AmeriCorps. It's unclear whether what grant year this AmeriCorps GL is for. Sometimes we're unsure and we reach out to you, like to determine what grant year you're billing, you're using this GL for. Balance sheet account, only balance sheet account. Right, thank you, Kim. Yes, so lots of issues with this. Very vague GL. We'll most likely go back to you and try to get a new general ledger. Most of you will be working with multiple grant years, so sometimes you want to indicate what grant year you're working on and what grant year this general ledger is for. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to move on to the next section. Okay, backup documentation. This is my favorite one. So this is section C and section E of the packet. Notice that we're billing for travel and we're billing for supplies. So we have $600 for airfare, $1,076 for hotel, and $350 for meals and incidentals, and $800 for supplies. So let's dive right in. I divided it into two sections. So let's focus on travel first. Airfare, hotels, meals and incidentals. So in the chat box, can you please type in your answers? Anything wrong with the airfare, hotels? Alcohol. Thank you, Cameron. No detailed receipt. Okay, no hotel receipt. RAD errors. Yeah, not RAD. No receipt for the airfare. Thank you, Tammy. No price in flight receipts. Yeah, no amount for flight. But we do have documentation for flights, but we'll review that in a second. Anything else for no receipts? Thank you, Kendall. No receipts for what? For the hotel, for no tax on airfare. Yeah, no tax on airfare. Okay, I think you guys got most of them. Let's go over them. All right, as some of you pointed out, missing documentation for boarding pass. So we have Dan's boarding pass. He's flying to New York to Boston, from New York to Boston for what I'm assuming a conference. It looks like everything's there with the exception of the price. We don't know how much this cost, this flight from Boston to New York. Notice that in the expense report, they're reporting $600. Maybe it's $300. I don't know about you, but a flight to New York to Boston seems like $600 seems like a lot. You know, I don't think it's pretty rad to fly first class. But yeah, so no calculation provided or proof of purchase for this flight. It's great that they provided a boarding pass, but there's no information provided. That's one of them. Next we have hotel. Anything wrong with the hotel? Someone mentioned it, I think, in the chat box. Let's see. We're charging $10.76, no receipt. Okay, yeah, no receipt. No other backup documentation, right? Thank you, Tammy. Right, there's literally no backup documentation. They're just reporting $10.76, nothing to prove that they've stayed in the hotel, the reason for the stay, etc. So yeah, major one, no receipt. Okay. Anything wrong with the meals and incidentals? In the chat box, type it in. $3.55, no receipt, and beer. Thank you, Tammy. There's beer. Anything else? What do you need for meals and incidentals when you're charging that to the grant? Any guess? I think most of you have been to our conferences, right? Meals and incidentals. Allowable per day. Andre, thank you. Yeah. Per diem, yes. Per diem, we don't need to submit the food. Exactly. If you have that per diem, then you're fine. Okay, so I'm gonna go over the answers. Thank you, Kim. Yep, so no meals and incidental documentation showing the daily rate. So if you're going to a conference, you want to submit that documentation by going to that government website and entering the date and the city. And in this case, they didn't provide any of that. So it's just this lump of money. And the various receipts they provided did not really, right, thank you, Brandon. Yeah, GSA website, the government website. So you want to provide that documentation. Plus, I don't think you need to provide the food that you charge to the grant, unless it's something outside of that. Then we can. I mean, really, it's case specific. But in this case, they provided that receipt for something, for food. Let's go over that in a second. We notice here that they went to this pad thai place. They, as someone pointed out in the chat box, that they're charging Bud Light. That's not rad at all. You can't really charge. You can't charge at all. You can't charge alcohol to the budget. You can charge food.
No light beer.
No light beer. Only, yep. GSA website. All right. Moving on. Okay, everyone. Backup documentation, section E. Okay, in the chat box, can you please type in your answers? Anything wrong with the equipment, section E? AmeriCorps service gear, 816. Looks like they're charging t-shirts, hats, sweatshirts with AMC logo. Receipts don't match amount billed. Thank you. Yeah, no itemized receipts. Thank you, Belinda. Anything else? Are service gear, are hats allowable? Sweatshirts allowable? In the chat box, you can say, type in A for allowable, type in N for no. Itemized receipts. No receipts match, okay. Is that it? Okay. with logo. It has to be with a logo, no regular hat. All right, so you got most of them. Right, so as Belinda pointed out, it's not itemized. It's unclear what they're charging to the grant. I mean, one can assume that they're buying hats at Hats for You, but it's very unclear. And as far as the other, they're charging $639 for something at LL Bean, not itemized. We don't know what it is. It could be gear. It's unclear. Gear needs to have logo, as Belinda pointed out. So there's no proof that this is allowable at all. So completely wrong. And also on top of that, they don't really add up. There's a discrepancy in price. It's a good catch, everyone. Okay, couple last one. Okay, I think that's the last one. Okay, yep. So this is the answer key. Thank you everyone for participating. The answer key, Anastasia is gonna upload it to the chat box in a second. So if I missed anything, please let me know. This is the first time we've done this virtually, and we've revamped this presentation into something new. But yeah, you guys did a great job. Thank you for sticking around and doing this with me. With that said, I will, yeah, so one of the important takeaways for this is the flow. Remember, if something's wrong with the expense report, something's gonna be wrong with the staff summary. Disrupting anything from this path we have to resubmit everything and do the work 2 times. So please make sure to keep an eye out for any mistakes. So now I want to talk about the perfect packet, what we call perfect. Anastasia, if you can upload that to this chat box, that'd be great. So the perfect packet was created as a way for us to show our programs how we prefer to have things organized and how we prefer to have things categorized and allocated in a certain way. So we can go over that as a group together. So once we have that file, maybe you guys can see it as I go over it. So a couple things to consider once you get the file. You'll notice that the flow, it's very clear that it goes from checklist to expense and match report, FSR, and then that backup documentation. Everything's clearly labeled. There's a cost allocation plan and a calculation. Thank you, Anastasia. So let's go into the packet. So once you get it, once you go into it, you'll notice the general ledger, very clear, separated by expense, by type of expense here. I know most of you have different softwares, so you can't really do this sometimes, but we want to see that it's clearly an AmeriCorps ledger. And in this case, you can see that it's clearly AmeriCorps for this grant year. Timesheets, you'll notice that they're separated by grant and type of grant. So you can see on the column 1619, 1617, 1718, different grant years, and then different types of grants for DOL and AmeriCorps. Also signed and dated. Next, we have our cost allocation plan. Some of you have a cost allocation plan. You don't need to submit this every month. That would be great. That way we can see what you're charging to the grant every month. You can see here the percentages they're charging to 1617 and 1718 for AmeriCorps, and the list of grants that they're charging to. And lastly, if you have a full-time member, you're going to have to fill out this member living allowance summary. Member living allowance summary requires like a name, a full-time slot type, start and exit dates, position titles, health insurance, and biweekly rate. I've redacted all that information from this document, but it's something that our programs sometimes miss. If you have a full-time member, please submit this and include it in your packet every month. To expedite the process, we want you to submit your error packet in an Excel format now with the new formatted way, but now with the new packet, you can save it as a PDF file, but we also wanted to include it in an Excel file. Label it and provide a calculation every month. And check in with us if there's something wrong with the if you're charging something to the grant that you think is not allowable. I think it would expedite the process if you check in with us and you don't have to do the work again. And yeah, organize it in Dropbox by grant year and month, something that's easy to miss, but it saves you a lot of work. Okay, that's it for this presentation. If you want more information, you can click on this link. We can go to your YouTube channel for a crash course that most of you have already gone through. Michael has a budget video as well. I have a staff summary video. You can also go to our Help Docs website where we have all kinds of FAQs and information. And watch out for our bi-monthly AmeriCorps newsletter every